Hello and welcome to Saints TV. This is episode 2 of, and we're still not even sure what to call it, but it's Joe, it's Steve, and it's not your average Joe, and it's Steve, and it's Candle Genius, and it's Duke Scoop, and it's a little bit of a it's 100% a campfire chat tonight. We got a lot going on. We got guys in the background who are fishing. Hey, we're broadcasting,
catching,
guys.
not just fishing.
It's in the refrigerator, fellas, right next to the sizzling meat by the campfire there. Landon Hillman is a star at fishing. He can help you out. Check that out. That little Tupperware thing. Thank you, Tupperware, for sponsoring tonight's broadcast.
We had Polaris last week, Tupperware this week. Man, we appreciate our national sponsors big time.
We sure do. You should take the whole thing down there. Landon will love that. He might snack on some of those rotten shrimp while he's catching giant lunkers.
Number 21 on the field, number 1 in your fishing heart, Landon Hillman.
Anyway, so actually we intended to start this before it was actually it was intended to be a campfire, but we thought there might be some actual daylight to go with it.
It was an hour and 27 minutes ago.
It just hasn't.
It's hard setting up cameras out in the woods by the river.
It is.
It takes longer than you think.
Call this a fireside chat.
Fireside chat.
And we were hosting our friends from Germany, and they have never fished before.
And they're catching, not
and
just
they're
fishing.
Better, they're clearly better at fishing than I am. They're actually catching fish. I was like, we'll just send them out there and go cast. They won't catch anything in the Cedar River because I can never catch anything in the Cedar River. But they're catching walleye,
and bass.
they're catching bass.
Who knows what they're getting?
And they're needing to reload and shrimp. Hats off to number 21, Landon Hillman. I'm sure he'll be helping these guys. Next thing you know, they're going to be reeling in like 48-inch northern pike. I've seen Landon do it. He's bound to do it again tonight. We'll put it on the broadcast if it happens.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
All right, so let's get to it, guys. We're talking about, you know what? I don't even have my notes in front of me, but we're talking about upcoming games. Friday night.
Let's recap last week first. You want to?
You know what?
You're getting ahead of the game there.
Yeah.
Let's go back.
Sorry, too many things going on.
Let's talk a little bit about, first off, if you're here to hear about Class 1A or 2A or 3A or 4A,
Get the heck off the show.
You're done. You just stop right now. We don't need the view. We are here for Class A football, right, gentlemen? That's what we're here to talk about. So we're going to focus on Class A football here in Iowa. Last week, we talked about some key matchups, right? I think we identified 5 of those key matchups, things that we saw as key to either district standings or who's going to win a district or ranked teams versus one another. Let's recap those. If you don't remember, or if you didn't watch it, you're going to want to go back and watch it because Steve the Soothsayer here on Saints TV, the Saintly Soothsayer, Steve the Saintly Soothsayer, used his supercomputer to predict 5 matchups last week, 5 key matchups in Class A. Steve went 5-0.
Before you get to it, who is Steve exactly? Steve is the guy behind the scenes. He's the man behind the curtain. When we make these predictions, when Steve makes these predictions, it is not us. It is not us. It is Steve.
Do not be confused.
I was wildly impressed with Steve last week. His performance, 5 out of 5. Go ahead, Joe, take it away.
5 out of 5. It started with Bellevue at Maquoketa Valley. We talked about this one last week on this show. Key matchup in that district. Bellevue came in looking to knock off Maquoketa Valley. Maquoketa Valley rolls 35-0. So in Maquoketa Valley, we're going to talk about them a couple of times throughout this broadcast tonight, but they lost a game to a Cascade team, a 1A class Cascade team in week 1, 10-9, kind of an odd football game. They have rolled since then. Last 5 football games, how many points do you think Maquoketa Valley's allowed?
Well, 5 football games. Yeah, 5 football games. I think if you're holding people to single digits, let's say it's 5 times 9, you're 45. You said 30, right? Those are probably really reasonable numbers.
That's a touchdown a game.
That sounds good. That sounds reasonable, right? What if I told you they had allowed none in that span?
Oof.
0. Have not allowed a point in 5 weeks.
Yeah, that can't be right.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. So I had to go look. It's right.
Oh my goodness.
Beats Bellevue 35-0. I don't think they're getting enough respect. I don't think they're getting not enough people are talking about Maquoketa Valley. Unranked Maquoketa Valley has not allowed a point in 5 weeks.
What they call sleeper?
That's a sleeper team right there. We'll talk more about them here in a little bit. That was game number 1. Steve called that one as well. Gives it to Maquoketa Valley. Maquoketa Valley rolls. Game 2, week 6 key matchup, Linville-Sully at Mount Ayr, another key district game. Thought that one would be fun. It was. Mount Ayr wins that one 38-18. So Mount Ayr comes away with a 3-touchdown victory. Sort of rolled throughout that game and kind of added to that score throughout and proved that they are a legit contender as well. We talked about them last week. They're probably somewhere in that top 16. They proved that they belong there last week with that win over a good Linville-Sully team. Game number 3, Newman Catholic at St. Ansgar. Well, obviously, we broadcast that one right here live on Saints TV. Newman Catholic comes in undermanned and shorthanded. Their quarterback, Thomas McGuire, our understanding is out for the season. He had a sling on. My understanding is something shoulder, perhaps collarbone. So we don't think we'll see him again. That was a huge piece of their offense gone. Big brother Cal McGuire tries to step into that spot. Isaiah Keston did everything he could. In the end, not enough. Saints roll 60-0.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen that game. St. Ansgar taking on the Newman Knights with all of their starters in. Obviously, that wasn't the case. And the result is 60-0.
Yeah, I think a lot of people expected a close game there. Looking on paper, 2 4-1 teams match up. This should be good.
Yeah.
Obviously, the injuries and the shorthanded nature of the Newman team last week. They will be less shorthanded this week, is my understanding. A few of those were not injury related; they were self-inflicted related. Those kids will likely be back here this week, so that will make. But they will be without Thomas McGuire for at least the near future. That is a game changer for Newman and something we'll have to keep an eye on in this district, where really those 3 and 4 seeds up for grabs here in District 2.
Yeah, if they can manage to get some wins without him in, that's going to be a really big deal for Newman.
And I think they can. Isaiah Keston's a special football player. We saw it. I mean, that kid, he is quick and he gets outside and he's very dangerous. So they'll put that together. The Saints had them scouted really well and played a great game defensively too. Just didn't allow much. Newman couldn't get anything going. They will here going forward, I have a feeling. Game number 4 was Sibley Ocheyedan at Galen Catholic. Another one of those we anticipated to be a good game. We've talked about how young Sibley was last year. Snuck into the playoffs. Played a really good game here at St. Ansgar in the playoffs. They have had a really good year. They hang with Galen Catholic, but end up dropping a tough one. Galen Catholic wins it 32-26. Steve had that one called almost precisely in terms of the differential. Had that thing pegged at 7-point differential. It ends up a 6-point ball game. Galen Catholic wins that one. They remain atop their district and now, in all likelihood, win that district. Galen Catholic will be a 1 seed going into the playoffs as long as they hold serve here in the last 2 weeks. Game number 5, Tri-Center at St. Albert. This one was really interesting. I think we gave the update. Welcome. There's the spotlight. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Well, I have the graphic up, but let's get it back. There's Joe.
There's Joe.
Someone pulled into the campground.
I cannot see. They do not know where the light switch is on these These new cars have these automatic lights. You can't do anything about it. You just got to wait till they turn
the
off.
camera can see you pretty good. Oh,
Well,
there we go.
obviously they're lighting the way. That's kicking Kimba Sue to the rescue on that
Kicking Kimba Sue's new Tahoe is lighting up the night here.
Well, I'll pop the graphic back on. So
there we go.
Okay.
Now we can. All right, back to action here. I can no longer see. My night vision is spent, but
Joe. Joe knows. Not your average Joe. Absolutely knows.
Game number
5. Well, so while you're getting your vision back,
we can cut this out, right? My vision's back. I'm ready.
Okay, so Steve called it. We're 5 for 5 last week, right? Did you get to the game number 5?
No,
I was
sir.
A little disrupted. Okay, so let's get back to that. We're literally at a campfire. We're literally feeding a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
Kicking Kimba Sue to the rescue. We're running low on line here, so she went to pick up some more wood. This is a very, very real situation.
Tri-Center at St. Albert. We talked about that. St. Albert plays a bunch of 3A, 4A teams early in the season. Then they kind of roll into district play, and you never know what they have. And they had a really good game the week before. We thought maybe they'd hang with Tri-Center. They did early. In fact, I believe we gave an update live on our broadcast. St. Albert was up.
They were
right?
up in that game.
In the first quarter, into the second quarter. In the end, Tri-Center rolls 49-15. So Tri-Center again.
15 or 16? Was it 16?
I have 15, but it could be 16. I believe you.
Either way.
One of us mistyped it. It's in that range.
Somewhere we're within
Either
a point,
got-
but there was a clear winner in that one.
Yeah, and Tri-Center, like I said, kind of proved we're legit as well. And that was part of why we highlighted that as a key game. Like Tri-Center, this is a trap game, right? A 2-3 St. Albert team. Can you overlook them? Do you come in not ready to go? They'll beat you.
Right.
Tri-Center does just the opposite. They come in, recover after a slow start, and win that thing going away. So Steve goes 5-0. I would say for the most part, the chalk takes it, right? The teams that everybody thought would win in week 6. And that leads to some more certainty, which we'll talk about here in a minute as we roll into some of our playoff predictions. We look pretty smart after last week.
Specifically, Steve looks incredibly
Steve
smart.
looks
5-0
incredibly
is a
smart.
pretty good way to go in week 1, though. I'm going to imagine that some of these key matchups here this Friday, today if you're watching it on Friday, or this week if you're not, I got to imagine there's some that are maybe a little tougher to pick.
There are a couple of games that I would call toss-ups. So we'll have fun with this one. We'll get to that here in a minute. Should we go to the newly released, completely new and dynamic IHSAA Week 2 rankings?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And by the way, by completely new and dynamic, of course, I mean exactly the same as last week.
This graphic was really easy to update. I just had to go in and add one to the records because they all won.
So your screen is not glitching. These are the second version of the rankings. So it's after week number 5, they released the first set of rankings, the first edition. These are the second edition here after week number 6 with absolutely no changes, right? The chalk one, we talked about that, right? Every favorite won, every team that was supposed to win did. And so it makes the ranking committee's job, those 6 folks' job, a lot easier, right? If we thought Starmont was the 10 last week and they won and held serve, are they the 10 again? Yeah, probably pretty easy to say they sure are. So,
I would have thought, though, that Maquoketa Valley would have cracked the top 10, given that the beatdown they gave to Bellevue, who I believe was either ranked earlier or they were kind of
ranked
flirting.
in polls. They were right there. Yep, exactly. They were not in the official poll rank, but they're
still in the running in their district. I mean, they're not out of it. I mean, they might need a little help at this point, but still a good football team to start this season. And I figured, maybe we would have seen Maquoketa Valley after giving
correct
5 weeks in a row pitching shutout. So, surprising, maybe. I don't know. I mean, but how do you bump a team out if they win? So
you got it, and I think that is Maquoketa Valley is probably the team as I look at this that's missing, right? If you looked at they probably belong in there. But then I struggle to find a team I'd kick out, right? Who doesn't belong? And of course, the obvious is the 10, right? Well, if it's somebody, it's the last one. And how do you punish a team for doing exactly what they were supposed to do and winning
that's the
game?
thing, right? I mean, and you certainly can't expect the Iowa High School Athletic Association to do that either, right?
Right. You got it. So, this week we'll sort this thing out even further. We're going to talk about that here just in a minute. But week 7, there are a couple of top 10 matchups where a couple of these teams play each other. There are a couple of situations where some of those teams that think they deserve to be ranked are going to get the opportunity to go win a game and prove
That is juicy.
That is juicy.
Anxious to hear your thoughts on that. Anxious to hear Steve's thoughts on that. This will be exciting. Exciting week for football.
So those are your version 2, we'll call it, of the IHSAA rankings. Like we talked about last week, those are important because they're going to help determine who plays who in that second round. Once you get to the Dome, they're going to seed those teams based on those rankings after the final week here. So they're important. They mean something. We've seen it play out last year. We've seen it play out in baseball. Now we'll get to watch it play out in football again this year. So something that matters, and obviously subjective. The other argument I think I could make. It involves our hometown Saints here. We are Saints TV after all. We're doing this for Class A. We love talking about small school football, and we really want to make this about the entire class, not just about our guys. But of course, we know a lot about the folks here in St. Ansgar, and if we want to play devil's advocate on our own dudes, that's what you'd say, right? Is, well, what in the world is St. Ansgar doing ranked ahead of Lisbon and North Lynn? Right? They have a loss on their schedule. They're the only 5-1 team ranked above Lisbon and North Lynn. Well, why is that? Well, because that loss was a last-second 1-point loss to West Hancock, who the state believes is number one. Right? So if you lose in a showdown at their place by 1 point by missing a field goal in the last second, that's worth something. It's a great way to say it. That's worth something, right? And so that's why I think you can make that argument St. Ansgar belongs exactly where they are. Now, I can absolutely hear that argument that Lisbon and North Lynn have done enough to prove that they need that spot. One of the really interesting things that we will see play out over these last 2 weeks of the regular season, which by the way is mind-blowing to say, we're into the last 2 weeks of the regular season here in Class A already.
It's like we just started.
You know, the Saints would love to see a Lisbon and North Lynn loss here in the next couple of weeks, right? Why not? Make sure that ranking stays where it's at. Let's stay ahead of them. Keep the Saints ahead of one of those teams. If either one of those teams falters, I think it'll be really easy for the state to say, no, that ranking committee to say, we're leaving the Saints at 3. They belong there. Both of those teams finished the regular season 8-0. Will it be hard for the Saints to maintain that lead if they finish 7-1? Yeah, toss up, 50-50 deal, right? But definitely something to keep an eye on, and we'll make these last couple of weeks very intriguing here in Class A football.
I got to believe that Coach Clevenger recognizes that the score of these next 2 weeks matters, right? If you win, but narrowly to West Fork this Friday, and you win, but narrowly to Lake Mills the final Friday, like, okay, so you're still finished 7-1, but a narrow win against teams that you probably should beat handily is maybe going to play a role if these other teams or other teams in there manage to finish the season very, very strong. So,
especially a team like ACGC, who has a key matchup this week, a really good game. If they blow out that opponent, which we'll talk about here in a minute, that's going to give them clout to stay there. Lisbon, North Lynn. North Lynn plays aforementioned Makogata Valley, right? So if they somehow score 35 on a Makogata Valley team that hasn't allowed a point in 5 weeks and blow them out, win that game going away, it'll be very hard for the committee to leave North Lynn behind St. Ansgar, in my opinion.
We talked earlier about why is that so important, especially these top 4. Why is that so important? And we'll talk about that later on in this broadcast. But at the end of the day, the 30,000-foot view, or a message, I'll say, in general, is you've got to go win these games in a way that leaves the Iowa High School Athletic Association feeling very confident in where you are ranked presently, right?
You got it. Don't just go win big. And if any of these top 10 teams, that's the mission right now, is let's go finish this thing, prove we belong where we are now or belong higher than we are now, because it matters in terms of where we have to go in the playoffs, who we play, what that matchup looks like, and then ultimately when we achieve our goal, and this is what coaches are preaching to these kids right now, when we achieve our goal and we make it to the Dome, right, now it's going to set that matchup too, and it'll matter very much who we play in game 1. Yeah, it's really cool to make it. You know what's more fun is to go win the whole darn thing, right? And matchups matter, and these rankings matter in those matchups. Fun time of year, right? What a great time of year. We get to have those conversations and speculations as we look at that. Of course, one of the biggest things that this comes down to, well, who's making it, right? Who's getting in? And of course, in Class A, that all comes down to those district standings, right? 4 teams in each of the 8 districts make it. 4 times 8, Mitchell County math, 32 teams will make it into that playoff bracket. So let's take a look at those district standings after 6 weeks of play. They look like this. Duke, do you have that graphic with just the top 4?
It's already on. It's the top 4 districts.
Top 4, perfect.
We're looking
All right.
at it.
So let's just work our way around. Let's start district number 1. We talked about Galen Catholic, the big win last week to send Sibley Ocheyedan to their second loss. It's my opinion that this district probably plays out in a very similar fashion to what you see right here with Galen Catholic ending up the 1, MMCRU ending up the 2, Sibley Ocheyedan and HMS fight out for the 3 and the 4. They play each other this week, so that 3 and 4 seed probably gets sorted out here on Friday night. But I think those are your 4 teams. In what order? The 3 and the 4 are probably still up for grabs. Galen Catholic's already beat MMCRU. They're going to be the 1. MMCRU is going to be the 2. And then HMS and Sibley Ocheyedan will fight it out for the 3 and the 4.
I believe they play this week.
I think you're exactly right. I think Sibley Ocheyedan gets that one, and they end up the 3 seed. Hartley Melvin Sanborn, the 4 in district number 1. District 2, we've talked about that one a couple of times. West Hancock is your number 1. They will remain, bold prediction time, they will remain your number 1. I'm going to go out on a limb. West Hancock wins District 2. St. Ansgar, the clear second place finisher in that one. Newman and Lake Mills then will fight it out for the 3 and the 4. I think Lake Mills probably edges them out, gets the 3. Newman flips to the 4. Without their quarterback, I think they will probably...
Well, you say Joe, St. Ansgar the clear number 2, but if Lake Mills beat St. Ansgar, that would bump us down to 4, assuming Newman Catholic wins out.
You got it. You got it. So anything can happen there.
Because Lake Mills does not. Newman Catholic should be 3rd, I believe, because they have the tiebreaker over Lake Mills. Is that correct?
Yep.
They beat them head to head.
Yep.
So St. Ansgar needs to take care of business, I guess, at West Fork and at Lake Mills.
Yeah.
Get ahead of
yep.
ourselves.
Obviously, you can't trip up a lake at West Fork this week, but then that Lake Mills game there'll be a lot on the line for both teams in District 2.
So one loss could drop the Saints to 4th place in this district. So
isn't that kind of crazy? Yeah, they got the stranglehold on the 2 until you get beat by Lake Mills. If that were to happen, and that would change things.
Or even beating Lake Mills but losing this week to West Fork could do that. So I mean, every game matters.
And that's why it's a fun time of year. District 3, we called this one a tie last week. I think this one could be really interesting. Nashua Plainfield has the edge because they have beaten North Tama already. North Tama has beaten South Winneshiek and Wapsie Valley. Guess who hasn't played yet? Wapsie Valley and Nashua, right? So that district will come down to who wins that matchup between Nashua Plainfield and Wapsie Valley. Word on the street, Nashua stud Eli Kalanoff is injured, has been nursing a ankle, I believe, and he's just not 100%. He's been playing through it, but if they get him to 100%, they will be a very dangerous team here. We saw them a couple of weeks ago here on Saints TV. The Saints win that one in a non-district matchup, 27-7. But Nashua Plainfield looking to get healthy in the district. They beat South Winn in overtime last week. So that South Winn team, 2-2 in conference or in district play, 2-4 overall. They're not a bad football team by any stretch of the imagination. So that'll be a really dangerous 4 seed if they end up the 4 seed. Is that South Winn team. North Butler's not out of it yet either because of how that thing could play out. So that's how District 3 looks. Again, if we're making a call today, I think it's Wapsie. I think Wapsie beats Nashua Plainfield, especially if Kalanoff's not 100%. Nashua Plainfield finishes 2, North Tama 3, and South Winn 4 would be our prediction there. But this one could go anyway and probably comes down to tiebreakers at the end of the day, especially if Wapsie gets it done versus Nashua Plainfield. Now we got a 3-way tie at the top. And you one tie, you all tie, and now we have to go to these tiebreakers, which we'll talk about next week when they become a little more relevant.
Yep.
District 4. There's our favorite here on Saints TV, Maquoketa Valley. We've said that name more times than anybody else here tonight. But Maquoketa Valley's 5-0, North Lynn at 5-0. Those guys match up Friday night. Probably the game of the night here in Class A is Maquoketa Valley versus North Lynn for all the marbles in District 4. 10th ranked Starmont, right, in danger of finishing as the 3 seed in their own district, but the 10th ranked team in the state right now.
Glad we're not in that district because you got 3 top 10 teams in that district.
Poor Bellevue, right? The 4 seed at 4-2, 4-1 in district play, and they look like they might be the 4 in that district. Fun district, really tough one there, District 4. District 5 has Lisbon, Pekin, Danville, and Columbus in there. I think Lisbon, they already have the win over Pekin, so they'll hold on to that unless something crazy happens.
They'll play Danville this Friday.
They do. Yep, you got it. So they that will be interesting. Then Columbus and Danville, I think, are going to have to fight it out for the 3 and the 4. I'll take Columbus there, but I think that'll be a good game as well. But I think you see those are your 4 teams there that are going to mix it up. It's a matter of where do the 3 and the 4 come out in District 5. District 6, Madrid, Mount Ayr, Wayne, and Linville Sully are probably your 4 in that district as well. I believe this one looks like this one we're done. Right, I don't think you see a lot of changes there. The top teams have already played. Mount Ayr proved last week they're there and they're a legit contender. They're going to be I'll just say it. I think they're a second round team for sure, and very likely a quarterfinal team is Mount Ayr, coming out as the 2 seed.
Well, we did see some shakeup with North Mahaska was in the 4th slot in that district, and you see they dropped down to 5 now, and Wayne nudges their way into the top 4 in that district. So there might be, for that last spot in the district, maybe some shuffling around here the next 2 weeks. So that'll be key to watch for whoever they get in the first round and how that district race shapes out.
District 7, another loaded district, ACGC 5-0. They lead that district. Earlham, obviously, they're in that 2nd seed. Riverside, a team that nobody's talking about that deserves a little more talk. I think they look like they're going to be a good team there as well. And then South Central Calhoun. As you look at that one, I think ACGC is the class of the district, but Earlham, boy, they're nothing to toy with either. And Riverside's going to be a super dangerous 3 seed. If they end up a 3 seed and travel to a number 2, make some noise there, probably, our way too early prediction says they might win that game. And now they match up. They make a really tough second round matchup for somebody, for a district champion likely coming out the other side. So that'll be a fun team to watch as well. District 7, I think, is a very quality district and will bring it. Earlham plays Riverside this week, so we'll know a whole lot more.
That'll tell us a lot
on Friday night. Yep, you got it. We'll be a lot more confident in whatever that bold prediction might be by the end of the night on Friday. District 8, Tri-Center leads it, tied with Woodbury Central. Right now they have that tiebreaker, of course, with that with the point differential in there. That's why they're listed that way. It'll be Woodbury Central versus Tri-Center Neola for the title. That there will be a literal district championship game in that district when those 2 teams play each other. St. Albert, who we've talked about a couple of times on this podcast, we like them. They control their own destiny. Looks like the 3 is theirs to at least go get. And then Kingsley Pearson and Westwood, Logan Magnolia. I know Kingsley Pearson's down there at 1-3 in district play, but they've played Woodbury Central and Tri-Center and St. Albert, right? So they have played the top 3 teams. They have yet to play Logan Magnolia or West Monona. They go win both of those games. They put themselves in the 4 seed.
And key to note too, Logan Magnolia they have beat Westwood.
Great point. Yep.
So they would hold that head-to-head tiebreaker there.
If those 2 tie, they win the tiebreaker.
When is that Tri-Center Woodbury Central match?
This Friday.
It is Friday night. We talked about it last. I think we teased it about 6 times last week of how many key fun games there were coming up Friday night here. There's 4 of them that are going to be absolute barn burners. There are 2 more that will decide the 3 or the 4 seed in a lot of districts. So there are 6 games that matter a lot in terms of playoff positioning. There are 4 games that will decide the district championship.
That's massive.
Should we jump to that?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Week number 7. So we've spent the first half hour here talking about the past. Let's move to the future. Steve's favorite part is talking about the future.
Well, as soothsayer, I guess that makes sense.
Right? When you're the soothsayer, you like it. So let's go through those matchups. And Duke, I don't know what kind of visual you have over there.
Oh, I've always got a visual.
Yeah, I knew you did. And sitting around the campfire here at Fireside Chat, Saints TV style. Week 7, Steve, the saintly soothsayer, will make some predictions. But first, we have to detail the matchups. We've teased them. Let's talk about them. Week 7, key matchups. Matchup number 1, Mount Air versus ACGC at ACGC. Okay, we talked about Mount Air. They've kind of held their own, beat the teams they were supposed to beat. Now they get the opportunity to go knock off the number 2 ranked team, right? You say you want to be ranked, Mount Air? Go find a way. Go find a way to beat ACGC. You will be ranked next week. I would just about mark that down. That will be a fun one. It is at ACGC. Maquoketa Valley at Northland. We've talked about this one a couple of times already. This is going to be a fun game. This will be I hate to break it to you Maquoketa Valley fans, you will no longer have a goose egg up defensively for 5 games in a row. You haven't allowed a point. That is very admirable. Northland's going to find a way to sneak one in the end zone here on you. So you will not win this one 6-0. Going to have to find a way to score if you're Maquoketa Valley. Now, they've done that too, right? Their lowest output the last 5 weeks is a 35-point victory last week.
They know how to score.
So they have no problem scoring either.
Right.
And they'll have same deal, right? You got a little chip on your shoulder, Maquoketa Valley. We should be ranked. The state's disrespecting us. All right. Well, you guess what? Go win. And you'll be on everybody's radar. You're on our radar, Maquoketa Valley. We had you first. We'll talk more about that.
I tell you what, if they pitch another goose egg, do a shutout.
Oh my!
I think they ought to drop the Saints out of that 3rd spot hanging on and put them in there.
Bold.
That's bold. But you're right. If they can,
I mean, come on.
If they can keep Northland to 0 points,
0 points,
that's massive.
Yeah,
you might be right. Game number 3 that we're watching here on your Class A preview prediction tailgate show is Earlham at Riverside. We mentioned both of those teams. Key district matchup there. Earlham is at Riverside in what will decide the 2 and the 3 seed in that district. I like Riverside. We'll talk more about why that is here in a minute. Steve really likes Riverside. There's your hint.
Really?
Before we get to it, Steve's a Riverside guy.
Steve.
Woodbury Central at Tri-Center Neola. We talked about that one. That will decide that District 8 championship.
Both undefeated in district.
Fun game there at Tri-Center. That may make that interesting. Home field advantage matters in high school football. The travel versus the rolling out off the school bus and into the peanut butter sandwich at home and back to school for the home team. That matters.
I'm going to look up how long that's got to be a drive, doesn't it?
That's a great question. I'm not sure I know my Woodbury County geography, but it feels like it is. I know where Woodbury County is. Where's Neola? I believe that's where Tri-Center is located if you're looking for a town. Duke has got the magic computer.
1 hour and 36 minutes.
So it's
a
a
haul
haul
on I-29.
It's a haul down I-29. Hour and a half, and then the school bus more like 2, feels like 3. That's somebody who rides the school bus more than they care to admit in the summertime. 2 hours in a school bus is an eternity.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
So Woodbury Central at Tri-Center, long road trip there. Both those teams have something to prove, right? After Woodbury Central loses that early one, feeling out of district, non-district game, I think they're feeling a little like, what did we drop that far for? We lost to a quality team in a close game. That's not fair. Tri-Center's kind of all season been, why aren't we up there? We should be up there. We're legit. We're the real deal. Well, both teams get a chance to go prove it on Friday night. That's why you play the games,
I
right?
like that.
How much fun is that? Those are our 4 key matchups. There are a couple of others. We talked about that. Sibley Ocheyedan plays HMS. Steve didn't do any prognostications on that one, but he told me secretly he thinks Sibley Ocheyedan rolls in that one. And then there is another 3-4 or game that will decide a 3-4 matchup. I have it right here. I believe if I have enough fireside light to look at it, I will tell you who I think the other key matchup is. Southwind and North Tama. Southwind and North Tama will play, and that game has huge implications in Nashua Plainfields district, which is all jumbled up with Wapsie Valley and everybody beating everybody. If Southwind goes and beats North Tama, it's going to throw a monkey wrench in the whole thing one more time. It's already a tie, and it'll be a stinking four-way tie here pretty quick if those teams can't figure that out. So, what a fun time of year! They will. That'll be a fun game too. We'll keep an eye on that one during our broadcast. I'm sure we'll be talking about it. So, your four key matchups: Mount Airy at ACGC, Maquoketa Valley at Northland, Earlham at Riverside, and Woodbury Central at Tri-Center.
Who's Steve got in each of these?
Let's roll the tape with Steve. Steve, if you missed last week, Steve, the St. Louis soothsayer, is a guy who he's a technology guy, right? And he's built a supercomputer.
Steve loves data.
He loves data. He pours his heart and soul into refining the data, because garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah.
So, man, he takes time on each one of these matchups, pours this data into the supercomputer.
It's divine data.
It's divine data. Then, and it's not enough just to use the data. Steve then applies a little old Hard Knocks common sense, because Steve went to the school of Hard Knocks. So he then uses that to manipulate and massage and come up with a prediction for each of these key matchups. Should we dive right in? Is that enough descriptors? Can we dive
really
in?
I have a lot of respect for how Steve does his work. So, yes, I'm anxious to hear what he has to say. Let's go.
Let's start with Maquoketa Valley and Northland, because last week Steve was roundly criticized around the internet for going all chalk. He picked all the favorites. Of course he went 5-0. How easy is this?
Mm-hmm.
So this week Steve's like, you know what? When you roll this out, Joe, let's start with an upset. Something nobody sees coming.
And upset. You hear that, dude?
You heard it here first.
I believe I'm hearing it as we
listen
to it.
Steve says the number 5 team in all the land is going down to unranked Maquoketa Valley, 31-28, an absolute barn burner, a great high school football game. He says Maquoketa Valley is just too balanced. They have this balanced offensive attack, height with the powerful rushing, wall with the passing game. Northland's defense is susceptible to the big play. Going to have to force Maquoketa Valley into mistakes, especially through the air. He thinks that's the key here. If that doesn't happen, and he doesn't see it happen, he just thinks the balance is too much for Maquoketa Valley, gives them the edge in a close game that's decided by defensive stops and special teams plays.
Wow.
There you go. There's your insight. Maquoketa Valley 31, Northland 28.
Goodbye shutout streak for Maquoketa, though.
I told you I didn't think they had that.
Steve agrees.
It wasn't me who thought that. It was Steve who gave me the insight. I'll give him credit. He told me that he thought maybe Maquoketa Valley might allow a touchdown or two this week. But he thinks they get it done.
But a whale of a game. That would be a dandy to be at this week.
Yes, it would. Should we go to game 2?
Let's do it.
Game 2, Riverside and Earlham, right? We talked about this one earlier. Earlham travels to Riverside. Again, Steve heard the naysayer, so he says, you didn't like all the chalk? Well, I'm going to go 2 for 2 on upset picks, teams that he doesn't think get enough respect. He's got Riverside 34, Earlham 28. So the number 5 ranked Northland team goes down, according to Steve. Number 6 ranked Earlham goes down.
Wow.
Both of them to unranked teams. He sees it playing out like this. Riverside 34, Earlham 28. Jackson Gordon for Riverside on the ground is just too much for Earlham's defense. He thinks Earlham can produce offensively. Obviously, he's got him down for 4 touchdowns, right? But he just thinks the ground game from Riverside and Jackson Gordon's too much. The defense for Riverside holds at the end, and Riverside wins at 34-28.
Another hour and a half bus ride for the Cardinals there.
Yep, and that's a great point. Riverside is a very long way for Earlham to go. Last game, Steve Sues.
Oh, 2 more games.
2 more games.
Yeah, I think your email you sent was a little, and you had an extra return, so it looks like there's a space.
Oh,
We got to go back to Mount Air ACGC.
Mount Air and ACGC. Should we go there next?
Sure.
I don't want to mess up the graphics.
Oh no, it's Steve he can adapt.
Steve, he's not good at typing, but he is good at picking football games. So let's do it. Number 2 ACGC hosts Mount Air in a key district matchup. ACGC led by Angus Young. Strong, consistent running game, solid defense. Going to make it difficult for Mount Air. Steve's just going to be honest with you right up front. Thinks that's tough. Thinks they control the clock. ACGC does. ACGC's ability to run the ball going to wear down the Mount Air defense, and ACGC rolls 35-24 over Mount Air.
Stop me if you've heard this before, Joe. Hour and a half bus ride.
Hour and a half bus
Wow.
ride. We have a common theme this week.
We've
Everybody
seen too.
is sitting on the bus for an hour and a half. Will those long bus rides?
Well, actually, the Northland Macokota one's only an hour 15.
That one's a little shorter.
But still,
Macokota
an
Valley.
hour bus ride for all of these away teams.
Yep, it's a big deal. No doubt about it. So in that one, again, ACGC 35, Mount Air 24. In our last one, then, let's roll on to the big one. I think this will be a really, really fun game no matter what happens here. Tri-Center, Woodbury Central, both teams feeling like they need this one to kind of earn that respect around the state. Both teams are making the playoffs. Both teams will be super dangerous. Obviously, we know what Woodbury Central did last year, just losing to West Hancock in the championship game last year. But it looks like, if you look on paper, Tri-Center has the edge offensively, and Woodbury Central has the edge defensively. Looks like it's a yin and a yang kind of thing here. The better offensive team matches up against the better defensive team. Sometimes those games come down to what, gentlemen? Keys to the game, number 1 is almost always
Take care of the football.
Turnovers, yeah.
take care of the football. You got it.
These
I
games,
think
they're not played on paper.
you got
No.
it. And I think this
And
one
what wins
comes
the
down
Defense.
Higher
turnover.
scores than the other team.
Usually that's the way to do it. That's right. That's a good way to do it too.
defensive stops and turnovers is what we're going with officially. Steve says Tri-Center comes away with the big victory, 28-24 over Woodbury Central.
Another close one.
Again, he points to the balance.
Yeah.
Steve's a big balance guy. He likes teams that can run it and throw it. And I'm a guy who believes in Steve's data set there. I think he's right. We've seen it, right?
Yeah.
We've seen it
Yeah.
where one-dimensional teams in Class A football get to the playoffs, win a ton of football games, and then hit a wall.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's just really hard to win in the quarterfinals and beyond when you can only run it or only throw it.
I agree.
All right? The teams that seem to be able to do both and have a little bit of balance are the teams that take that next step and make it to the Dome and win a semifinal game and put themselves in position to win a state championship. There are certainly exceptions. Don't email me. Don't email Steve. He knows there are exceptions, right? But it seems like, especially in what I don't know, let's call it the last 6 or 7 years, look at those West Hancock teams. Look at the Grundy Center teams that not only could they run the football, but they could throw a 60-yard bomb over to the top too, right? To help you. You got to respect that pass game or we're going to do this, right? And you can't just gear up to stop the run, because if you do, we're going to beat you over the top 2 or 3 times. And now instead of a 7-point game, we beat you by 3 touchdowns. So I think that's why balance is so key in Class A, and it's why Steve has some of these predictions the way he does, because he thinks there's some balance in teams like Macokota Valley and Riverside. going into this next week? We will find out, right? The Steve's a little unproven here. Sure, he goes 5-0 in his first debut here on the internet, and he thinks he's pretty special. We're going to find out. Steve might just come back to earth here in week 7, Class A high school football.
I mean, you got to remember Woodbury Central, they were in the state championship game a year ago. So, I mean, they got experience that Tri-Center doesn't have. So there could be intangibles like that rear their heads on Friday night. And just like that, you got yourself a win when, Steve said you weren't going to win. So
you got it. And I think, Travis, you're Duke. You said it. These games are not played on paper. And there's a reason we played these games, because those intangibles, that experience, the senior leadership, we talk about it a lot here in Saints land of, hey, who doesn't want to be done? Who wants it more? Right? Who's ready to go play basketball, and who wants football season to last one more week?
Yeah.
And it matters. These are 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids that are giving us everything they got, but sometimes wanting it more matters. Talent matters too, but sometimes wanting it more does matter.
Even with Steve's bold predictions, when you take a look at some of the differentials that he's proposing, one play, right? One touchdown pass that turns into a pick six completely brings that game another direction. And you talk about the teams that are going to win in the dome. Those teams can overcome that, right? These things, one that probably prevent it, right? They're going to be disciplined enough to make sure that doesn't happen. But if it does, they're also positioned to overcome it. And so that's why when you see a prediction like Steve is making of a 1 touchdown game or less than a 2 touchdown game, like that's a pretty bold prediction. A lot can happen to change the outcome of that game. I'm really anxious to see how this one shakes out.
A lot of Steve's predictions come with that kind of qualifier at the bottom. Hey, this is going to be a close game. This is a one possession deal. So I think you're spot on. And that's why you play the game. Because like you said, one turnover completely and totally blows up any prediction that you might have. And that's why I love this time of year. And I love Class A high school football, because anything can happen on any Friday night. We saw a couple of those last year in week 7 and week 8. Will we find some this week? Let's go find out. Let's go play the games and find out.
Yes, sir.
Last segment here on the Class A show here on Saints TV is where we make our way too early, way too bold playoff qualifier predictions.
Still too early.
Still too early, yes. After this week, we'll kind of start to really hone in on, hey, these are probably the 32 making it. And then the hard job becomes, well, who's going to play who, and what happens when they get to round number 2, right? But after last week, starting to feel good with a couple of exceptions about who those 32 are going to be, right? And Duke, you mentioned it. There are a couple of those 5th ranked teams, 5th place teams right now in district races that absolutely have a shot to be the 4 or even the 3. Some 6s that absolutely can get their way back in there just based on how those teams match up and who they've played in the district and who they haven't. So we'll know more after this week, but our way too early, way too bold predictions start to look like this. Do we have those pods? Do you want to start with pod number 1?
Yes, let's do that right now.
Pod 1. So, by the way, full disclosure, yes, we understand 32 teams make it. And by the way, if you haven't followed Class A football in Iowa for an extended period of time, they set those first round matchups, right? So 32 teams make it, 4 in each district. A 4 is going to play a 1. A 2 is going to play a 3. Those things are set. They're going to use geography. They're going to use rankings to try to determine who plays who. But that's it. That's the only structure, the only part of the schedule that's set initially is these. One's going to play 4 and 2's going to play 3, and we're going to marry these things up based on geography and rankings.
Should we show the map?
Let's do it.
Let's show the map while we're talking about that.
So what we did here, and by we, of course, I mean Duke, because
of course
he's the talented guy here. We're all just Candle Genius and I are just here to look pretty. But what you see on your screen right now, you know what? I'm going to do a disservice. Duke, take it away. Tell us what we're looking at here.
So we marked all the current 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s in the state based on where their district is. So ahead of their name, if you see like a number 1, that's the District 1, and then number 2, District 2, So they're all kind of grouped together. And so,
Run us through the colors. The blues are
the blues are, those are the 4s. The greens are the 3s. The yellows are the 2s. And the reds are the 1s. And when we say 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, that's the place currently they are in
the
their district standings.
So if these 32 teams make it, hey, this is how the state will have to.
They'll probably do something like this, where
Correct.
they throw darts at a map or something on the wall, and
Yep. Because they know a blue has to play a
red,
right, and a green has to play a yellow. So some of these get pretty easy, right? It's pretty easy to go, well, okay, but they don't just use geography, gentlemen. They also take into play season record, who we've played. The number one team theoretically should get the easiest game, right? On paper, anyway, the easiest game, if geographically it's even at all possible. We saw it last year. St. Ansgar was ranked number 1 going in. They got a team that traveled in week 1. What? I don't remember. It was over 2 hours, right?
Sibley, yeah.
And they traveled 2 hours and 40 minutes or something to come to St. Ansgar.
The state there, if you look.
So because that was deemed, as the appropriate matchup. So it isn't just geography, but it certainly matters. So they're going to have to take this map, what's fair and what's reasonable in terms of travel.
Yeah. You're probably not going to see Bellevue going to play Galen Catholic in the first round.
That's
all the way across the state.
I can tell you that's not going to happen.
Southwind probably not going to play Tri-Center in the first round because that's crisscrossing the state again.
Right, but
Newman versus Mount Ayr probably not going to happen.
Right, but could a team travel 2.5 hours to go play a football game? Yeah, we saw it last year. It's happened.
Yeah, it has happened.
And they're going to try to pair up teams that in the first round that aren't in the same district. You can almost bet on that as well.
You bet. Yep, they're going to try to avoid those district matchups if they can.
For sure.
Yep.
So that's kind of the map we looked at. Now let's jump back into the pods.
Yep. So we took that, trying to predict what do those matchups look like in each of these pods, and again, knowing that after week 1 and those 32 teams sort themselves into 16, they're going to redo it again. They're going to bring that map out again. They're going to look at the rankings again. They're going to look at who's played who. They're going to look at who's already played in the same district, try to split those folks up and do those kind of matchups. So
disclaimer, this bracket, the way that's drawn isn't actually how it's going to, you don't guaranteed to play the winner of the other round, but we kind of paired them up with some, this might make sense to see them play into the next round sort of thing if you base it on the higher seed winning. So
you got it. So pod 1 looks like this. West Hancock, we have playing Sibley Ocheyedan. That game, of course, would be at West Hancock. Woodbury and HMS. That game would be at Woodbury. MMCRU and Newman matchup in our playoff scenario here. And Logan, Magnolia, and Galen Catholic would play that one out. That is your first 8 qualifiers in pod 1. We think it looks something like that. Pod 2, ACGC matches up with Wayne. Again, we think ACGC holds serve. Steve agrees with us with his predictions. He thinks they win that district. They would match up with Wayne. Mount Ayr and Riverside. Haven't we talked about both of those teams tonight? That would be a whale of a first-round matchup if those two teams end up going at it.
And, Riverside, they play Earlham. You see Earlham down. We'll get to them here in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But, Steve had Riverside with the upset. But when I shuffled things around here for this bracket, I kept Earlham ahead of Riverside. Yep. So they could swap positions here if Riverside pulls that upset off. Now, being the 3 seed, you could end up playing a Mount Ayr team who was another 2 seed. So it's like,
right.
Winning this game Friday could be important if you want to play, at home or if you want to play on the road and play against a tough team. So
no doubt. And
we talked about that being a whale of a game, and the way to avoid that is, improve your position in your district.
Yep, that's why these regular season games matter so much, and that's what these coaches around the state right now are preaching to kids. Don't let up. Don't let up. We can't have an off week. We can't afford it. Let's go do what you have to do. I think Eric talked about it earlier of let's not just win. Let's go send a statement here if we need to.
You have to.
Earlham at St. Albert in that pod, and then Tri-Center at South Central Calhoun rounds out pod number 2 and your second set of 8. That's half of the 32 qualifiers we think play out like that. Pod number 3, Maquoketa Valley and South Winneshiek. That would be a fun one. You know, South Winn has played some tough games. They've played tough teams very tight. And, of course, we've raved about Maquoketa Valley all night and how good we think they are. So they get a chance to prove it this week, but we see it. As of now, we'll put Maquoketa Valley and South Winn in that round of 32. Madrid and Columbus. North Tama and Starmont. That would be another good game. Those two teams familiar with each other in multiple sports over the years. They're not terribly far apart. And then St. Ansgar and Wapsie Valley is our prediction there.
You guessed that earlier this year.
Of Pod 3. I just have this feeling that your Saints and Wapsie Valley match up at some point in these playoffs. It feels like the state likes to send them our way or send us their way over the years, and I just have a feeling that one's going to play out.
You know, it's kind of funny too. Was trying to leave the Saints for last, to try to pair everybody else up, and then you get down to St. Ansgar, and it's like, oh, well, the last team that kind of makes sense geographically, plus where they at in the standings for the district. Oh, Wapsie Valley.
It's Wapsie Valley.
To be them. So.
Wapsie Valley can change that entire narrative by winning out with their schedule, right? Because then they go win that district, and we still may match up, but it might be the quarterfinals. Here's how crazy 1 or 2 game matters in these last 2 weeks is Wapsie Valley could match up with St. Ansgar in that round of 32 in the very first round. If things don't go their way the next 2 weeks, if things do go their way the next 2 weeks, that game won't happen until the quarterfinals. It'll be the game to go to the Dome. That's how crazy that matchup changes based on what is really one football game.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it this way, if you go back last week before the Newman game when we put our first prediction out, we only had 2 teams fall out of our playoff prediction and 2 new ones come in. And if you compare this bracket to the last one, it's completely reshuffled.
Completely different. Yep. I love it. And that'll probably happen again next week.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you're right.
And that's why we call it, a little bold and a little too early, but it's so much fun to just have the discussion and think about, well, where could these things end up? So that is the end of pod number 3. Pod 4 looks like this: Lisbon, Bellevue, Northland, Danville, Pekin and Linville, Sully, and Nashua, Lake Mills, an all North Iowa matchup in that last one. I think, again, Nashua, right, and depends a lot on how they do against Wapsie Valley next week. That will help solve that answer. We like Bellevue a lot. Bellevue will be a very dangerous team based on how they've performed against some good teams. They don't have a signature win. Bellevue doesn't, but they go get one in the playoffs. Nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah, right.
So the Bellevue team appears to be hungry there. And then, of course, we've talked about Northland, and they look like the real deal. They have a chance to prove it this week, and in their ranked matchups, they can prove Steve wrong. Old Northland can by taking care of Maquoketa Valley on Friday night.
Well, and we went with Steve's prediction in this playoff bracket because
great point.
Danville is currently a 3, which they would be playing Northland as a 2, so that factors in Maquoketa Valley winning that upset battle. So you could swap then back into pod 3 with Maquoketa Valley, and maybe Northland is hosting South Winn at home for the first round. So
you got it.
Actually, I think that's what we had last week.
I think it is what we had last, and we may go back to that next week.
Go back to it. We'll see how the games play out. It's kind of impossible to tell, but like you said, Joe, it's fun to talk about.
Yeah, that's why it's fun. We're just trying to create conversation. Speaking of that, help us name this show if you like what you're seeing. Comment down in the comment section here on YouTube where you found this, and help us name whatever this thing is. Give us feedback. Tell us we're crazy. Tell us we're way wrong. Tell us you think a team is being disrespected or underranked or whatever, be respectful, of course, because we're having fun with this.
We feel like their team should be higher ranked. That happens. That's the whole part of it, right? That's part of being a fan.
Yep, and we love the interaction, right? It's about the conversation. Let's go have fun with it.
We're doing this around a campfire.
You got it. You got it. We don't take ourselves too seriously. You shouldn't either. We're just trying to have fun and create the conversation and shine a spotlight on the kids who have done the work in Class A to get themselves into this position to be talked about, right? To be you're one of the better teams in this small class 11-man high school football here in Iowa. These kids, each and every one of them, deserve that credit. Yeah. They put in the work. They put in the time to get here. Let's celebrate them. Let's talk about that's who wins in this whole deal. That's what it's all about, is celebrating the kids that put the work in, so that their communities can take a little pride in what they do, right? And that's awesome. That's what small town high school sports are all about. Is the whole town rallies around it. The last time the Saints were in the Dome, I left town that day and we went down, obviously, to the game, and it was like, well, I might be the last guy out of town. I should probably make sure all the doors are locked, because there was nobody left, right? Everybody's in Cedar Falls. Yeah. And that's what's cool about this stuff. It doesn't, young, old, everybody in between, kids in school, no kids in school, no kids at all, doesn't matter. I'm going to the football game. Yeah. Because our communities rally around our schools. So I think Candle Genius has said it, our school is our town's brand over and over and over again. Absolutely. And how important that is. And it shows, I think, in high school football. And so that's part of why we're sitting here rambling around the campfire tonight. It's just fun to talk about and bring some attention to those kids in those schools that have earned it.
Yeah, there's nothing better to do on a Friday night in a Class A community than to go to a football game. So we hope, of course, everybody who's listening to this, hopefully you're cheering in the stands of whatever game is in your town, right? Saints will be at West Fork here this Friday. Might be tonight, depending on when you're listening to this. But like you said, the school is the identity of these small towns. This is who we're here to serve, right? We're not talking about 1A or 2A or 3A or 4A, 5A. We're talking about A schools. And I think it's a really in-depth analysis that Not Your Average Joe that you offer here, and Duke Scoop, and of course Steve is putting his 2 cents in on, and it's just a lot of fun for us. We're glad to be here, glad to do it, and what a special time of the year. Late football season here in Iowa. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. Thank you, Not Your Average Joe. Thank you, Duke Scoop. Candle Genius coming at you here from the campfire chat. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you at the football game. Until next time.